So I also want to frame this person here is Rebecca Watson, and I will recommend that everyone go check out their videos and subscribe to them on YouTube. The sad thing with Rebecca is like I don't think she gets a ton of views in part because we've talked about this on the show before. She was involved in something called Elevator Gate within the atheist community, which was a split back in, I want to say it was like 2013, something like this, where she took a ride on an elevator uh, at an atheist conference, and some dude hit on her on the elevator, and she politely declined and got off the elevator. But then the next day made a YouTube video being like, please don't like ask a woman at like 3 in the morning to go back to your like hotel room in an elevator. Like it's not cool. Don't do that. Like it was the most like just calmly, just like please don't do this. And then it was just like feminism is destroying the atheist community.
It's
Just like uh and it became this whole thing, right? It was like it was before Gamergate. It was Elevator Gate. It was like a huge thing. And so because of that, a lot of people like turned on her and hated her. And so I feel like sadly like her content is largely underviewed compared to other people. Even though I think it's got some quality stuff there.
what? Sorry, this might come off as stupid.
So yeah.
What happens at an atheist conference?
You sit around and talk about why God doesn't exist.
It's just there's a
What
big
is
sign
this? Are
that's
you
like if
guys
you
kidding me?
or when you die nothing happens and like big fireworks and stuff like that. Like I don't
Yeah.
I'm trying to picture it and it's tough.
They
First,
probably talk about so-called science a lot.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
I'll explain it in a second, but first I need to thank the CEO of Pfizer who just followed us. So I guess thank you for creating the vaccine, or at least playing some role in its construction. Actually, now that I say that, you're the CEO. You probably played no role at all, but like, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for protecting the IP. That's really cool of you.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's mean. I don't know. I don't want to
Well,
chase
I
any
mean,
CEOs away. I apologize.
thank you for prolonging this pandemic by refusing to give the international community the intellectual rights to this, to your highly profitable vaccine.
I'm sorry. I'm happy they subscribe to your channel.
they just said, remember, guys, get your booster shots every 6 months or sooner until the end of time. Yeah, of course.
Well,
And I will do it,
one,
CEO.
fuck time. We're ending time right now.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
But so to your question about atheist conference, I've always been a weird, or I wouldn't say weird atheist, but like I've never felt a lack of community. I do feel though that there was a lot of atheists who were in families who, did not like them for being atheists. And so like the conferences, even though like
Right.
largely they would get up there and they would say things like, here's why God is silly, and everyone would have chuckles and whatnot. But like it was a sense of camaraderie because these are people who like don't have that kind of community, right? So that I think that's the main purpose they serve, if that makes sense. Even though, like, I
Yeah,
agree, there's something ridiculous about like, what are you gonna do other than sit around and just be like, God doesn't exist, right?
yeah. Yeah, it's once you get past that thin layer of the I am very smart, then it's like, there's a value to that. I mean, if you feel alienated from the closest people in your life, feel like finding people that think the same way as you is probably a good thing. So I take back the silly bit that I was gonna try and create out of that thing.
But the funny thing is, like, you talk about the people who, I refer them as like the people who like the smell of their own farts. Like, there's like narcissistic. I'm so smart. I read all the science. I'm like a fucking brilliant person. There was a lot of those types at those events, which is partly why uh, I didn't want to be a part of the community anymore. I mean, like, not only that, like, a lot of them, just like in any other fucking movement or cult or whatever, a lot of them turned out to be sex pests as well. So, I mean, like,
Yeah.
that's the funny thing is she got a lot of shit because of her one comment, and it turns out that a lot of the people who like shat on her, like, they all turned out to be sex pests. Like
It's weird
Lawrence
creeps.
Krauss, Michael Shermer are two bigger named people who would attend these events and were credibly accused by multiple women of really shitty things.
Ugh.
it's every community. I mean, but that's the thing is like atheists used to have this pretense of like, but like, see, we're not Christians, and so we're totally moral. And we don't hate gay people. We're welcoming. But then they would engage in the same shitty behavior. And that's
Hmm.
also I think going to play into the Jonathan Haidt thing. Is he was sort of in that community for a bit as that I'm a rational science man, you know, and I'm going to hang out with Sam Harris and we're going to have rational discussions calmly about whether or not black people have lower IQs. We're just going to calmly discuss it.
It's, it's fine because the tone that we use.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yes. So, and some of that's good.
ugh. Okay.
But we'll watch some Rebecca Watson here. I just think the overall point's nice, and I also thought it would be nice to somewhat. I mean, like she still gets more views than us, but like promote her somewhat. So here we go. This is the lie uh, that left wing people are somehow siding with left wing anti vaxxers are siding with the
I recently read an article from NPR called Inside the Growing Alliance Between Anti Vaccine Activists and Pro Trump Republicans. And I want to talk to you about it because I think it echoes a common misconception amongst critical thinkers. And I am frankly very tired of it. And I would like to do away with it entirely. The misconception is not that Trump Republicans are more likely to be anti vaccine. The research is showing that they are much less likely to be vaccinated and therefore much more likely to die a horrible death thanks to COVID 19. So, no, the misconception is this. Anti vaccine sentiment is an essentially liberal form of pseudoscience that has only recently won over conservatives thanks to Donald Trump and COVID 19. That is not true. There
So I'll pause it there. Like, have you ever heard this? Like, a lot of people say that, like, uh, before the Trump phenomenon, like vaccinations were a left wing thing or a liberal thing, or like
I
anti-vaccine stuff.
I've heard that from a very specific centrist pundit in Canada actually. Um had a hell of a Twitter thread saying that anti-vax sentiments were a left-wing thing. But I always felt like that was them not understanding the political spectrum and just assuming that like people that were also into like um super like new agey medicines
I think
like
I'm curious to know who this person is, but maybe you want to tell me that before I give my thoughts on
um no, tell me the thoughts first and
it.
I'll tell
Okay,
you.
yeah. So, my thoughts on it is just that uh, I think a lot of people associate new agey anti-vax people as being left wing because they're more
Yes.
open on certain metrics. So it's like they'll be open on things like they might not care about gay marriage, for example, or they might be open sexually and be like reading the Karma Sutra, because it's exotic or whatever like shit that they're into. But often, like when you interrogated these people, and like I've mentioned this before on my streams before that I cut my teeth on like combating anti-vax rhetoric long before the pandemic was a thing. Like that's where I first started getting involved in activism. And when you interrogated the people even back then, it was largely like a purity movement where it was like I don't want these foreign entities like polluting my body, and that's why I only do like juice cleanses and like and there was a real sort of like you found when you talk to them like a superiority context, like you're the unclean for doing all the dirty things that you do. I have purified myself by not taking these chemicals into my body, and even though like it's good that they were cool with like certain sexual issues and stuff like this and sexual orientation, uh it was weird like for them like they still had this kind of like puritanical creating walls of us and them and all this stuff that you find on the right wing frequently.
I could see that. They're like a little bit more Gwyneth Paltrow than Susan Sarandon.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I
I'm
see
doing
what
my
you get
best
at.
here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but like to me, it was not at all surprising once COVID was happening that you had these like people who were in that wellness community all of a sudden becoming like QAnon supporters and all of a sudden becoming Trump supporters. Like I have friends growing up that I were always in those like wellness communities, anti-vax, all that stuff. And even though they would like support things like Barack Obama, Trump just all of a sudden they're like, I think you're being too mean to Trump. And it's like, why? Because like he came out anti-vax, you know, like, and I saw it coming like a mile away. I knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah.
There's a couple things I think on that note. Like, Viking said that he's noticed a lot of them, the new age crowd, have like a conservative fiscal leaning, and like yeah, because a lot of them are based around like small businesses and stuff like that too, which also lends itself to like that sort of thinking. Like
But and also the middle
if the
class people can
CFIB,
afford the therapies and shit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but then also like I'm just thinking about like a personal example where it was like I had a coworker who once you got her going on stuff, like she was very into like colloidal silver and like CBD oil and like a bunch of other stuff like that. And like for the most part, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, you've had a bunch of health issues and like doctors weren't able to really help. And so you figured things out on your own. Whatever, cool. I don't really give a shit. But then like every once in a while you would get her going and she would just start talking about how um 5G would impede your ability to advance to the next plane and that kind of thing, and how like haven't you noticed that there's like you're just seeing less people around these days, and like you know people like,
What?
and like she was very earnest in like saying that like I was going to ascend and kind of disappear at some point, and I was like, yeah, sure, Amanda, like yeah, true, like whatever. And I don't know, like it's one of those,
I
I'm so thankful that I broke my ankle right before COVID hit, because otherwise I would have been working with her
yeah.
throughout it. And I have not seen her since. I do not want to know where she has descended since then. But also like she's a genuinely like nice, loving person. And it's like, yeah, like she's, very pro like gay and queer and trans and like, not any more racist than your average white person type of thing. Like, you know, but also like, damn, I bet she fell down that QAnon rabbit hole so bad. Like, God, I'm glad that I walk past that workplace every once in a while and I just like do not look inside for fear that like I might have to go in and talk to her because I just don't
there's
want to find out where it's gone.
there's just like Hugh burnt into the wall. It's
Yeah.
like, uh,
Or in her blood.
Amanda, wherever you are.
I
Uh,
I always like the G conspiracies are my favorite because it's like why like no one was afraid of 4G. Like what like once you hit the 5th G, that's like when we need to like freak out. There was something like, 3G, 4G, perfectly fine. 5G, oh shit, we've gone too far.
it's that's too many G's.
Yeah.
Where are we gonna
the
put them
fifth
all?
the fifth
I gotta
G
get to
just
the next plane.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not totally read up on planes of existence, but I mean, do we really want to go to the next one? What's there? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. What is that?
I'm sorry.
No, but there's like there is a level of like religiosity. I want to like on this aspect of like them being nice, because this might be a theme of today too. It's like as we're gonna get like some of it like hates ideas that somehow us on the left we just don't understand them. We don't understand the right? And there's an aspect in which like I fully get where they're coming from, like especially in things like big pharma and stuff like this. Like there's aspects of our government that I don't trust. There's just a level of like uh going too far with that kind of attitude or whatnot. But even in the level of like, yeah, they're nice. Like to me, it's less about like, yeah, they're nice people, so like you treat them with these kid gloves or something like this because it's like I don't know. Like I found like when Jordan Peterson showed up on the scene too, like a lot of these people started adopting like anti-LGBTQ views, even though they were the kind of people who would have been more supportive of it before, because he spoke to them on a certain level that like, no, you gotta like it was like in this like self-help woo guru shit of like you got to sort yourself out and like do what's right, and like the reason why you feel kind of weird right now isn't just that like you're ingesting impurities or whatever like you're afraid of, but it's also because you're not living purely, you know. And living purely would be mean like not doing any of the gay stuff, not like getting married and settle, like, you know. And so like it's an easy way for them, I think, to like slip into it. uh and that to me is like we should be worried about that. Like even though they are nice people, like we still should be worried about it, you know.
There's
Yeah,
like, sorry, Vienno, you go.
I was just gonna bring up Amanda again.
I want to hear
Um,
everything about Amanda.
okay, so like the thing is too, because she was a grandmother, but only in like her 50s type of thing. And from what I gathered, because I worked with her for years, and what I gathered, like she had been kind of born into like a weirdo Christian cult and like raised within that context. So it's weird that like this, like her current like spiritual weirdness was just like an infinite step up from where she was raised also. And then also like, yeah, like she, yeah, like it comes from a place of alienation still. Like you do feel that something is wrong with society. It's just the place that you decide to go with it is a little bit off, shall we say. Um and she was also fine, like for the most part, going to like actual doctors at least, which is again something of a step up from a lot of these sorts of folks where it's like after a certain point it's like, oh no, like real doctors can't help me with anything. Whereas like she was like, no, like, you know, you take what you can get. But it's also like, yeah, it's just like, oh, I don't know, all of it's so fucked up. Sorry,
Yeah.
Eric, you go.
I was just gonna say, like, the power crystal to QAnon pipeline is so real, right? And like, I think there's so much that encompasses that. Whether it's the juice cleanses and like the big detox stuff, and the burying malachite in your yard to fix any sort of like low vibrational energy in your house. Um, and then I think anti-vax nonsense is in there as well, right? Like it's all sort of in the same sphere.
Yes, it's yeah, for sure. What the hell is malachite?
It's a mineral.
Okay,
I had
it
a
sounds
I had a
like
phase where I was editing podcasts, and I had
Isn't
to
it?
edit someone's podcast, and it was all about her new small business where she was selling the power crystals that would help you get your life straight.
sounds like a
Um,
biblical community that got genocided. The Malachites.
it probably was.
Yeah, I think. Um, sorry, I looked up malachite. It's copper carbonate hydroxide. So I don't
Newt-y.
know, like, yeah.
And I know a lot about these woo things. That was the first time I heard malachite before. I was like, oh, interesting, fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even the wiki has like some interesting bits on that.
On malachite.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm.
That's-
This is now all about malachite. I'm very sorry.
No,
We're
that's
getting crystal pilled.
I have a referral code still for that woman's website. So you guys let me know.
I love that crystal pill. Jesus Christ. All right, I'm gonna play Rebecca. You hit us with the crystal facts when we get going.
Okay.
There is no growing alliance between these two groups because they are not and have never been two distinct groups. In fact, they are a Venn diagram that looks less like boobies and more like, I don't know, like a solar eclipse. The NPR article is built upon this false premise, mentioning early on the fact that one prominent anti-vaccine guy is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has, quote, championed other liberal causes in the past. That's true. It also highlights the wacky tale of anti-vaccine propagandist Del Bigtree, who admits that he is still a registered Democrat and was a lifelong liberal progressive, despite speaking at a conservative women's group in Texas about his anti-vaccine bullshit.
It's also worth noting that Del Bigtree was at the January 6th thing in Washington D.C. With a nurse from London, Ontario, so who since lost her job, traveled all the way down. But
Yeah.
sorry, Deanna.
Since we have pause, I'm just going to read one quick sentence. A 17th century Spanish superstition held that having a child wear a lozenge of malachite would help them sleep and keep evil spirits at bay.
I'm not crystal pilled yet, but maybe you've nudged me just a little. If it's gonna keep the
Give
evil
it time.
spirits at bay, I need to know for a fact that
boy.
it will before I before I commit.
So I like giving Del Bigtree a or the benefit of the doubt. He was in the Capitol on January 6th, just asking questions. I'm assuming
Yes,
just asking the questions.
I will say one interesting thing here, and is there was so on January 6th there was the Trump part of the rally where everyone went and then stormed the Capitol. Okay, I will say to their not to their credit, but like these two events were associated, but it was like a side gig. In terms of like I don't know if you've ever been to like Warp Tour or some sort of like big concert, but you got like the main stage, which would have been where Trump was, but then you got like the local bands over here playing on a smaller stage that you can go see, right? And it was kind of like that where Del Bigtree and the anti-vax people had their own kind of like health summit on January 6th at Washington D.C. that was associated with the big rally, but they didn't do the whole storm the Capitol thing. Only because they didn't know it was happening because they were at the side gig. Okay, so I don't know if that like exonerates them or not, but that is kind of what was going on there.
I hate that January 6th was like boots and hearts.
Yeah.
You know, like I really, really hate that.
Yes, it kind of was. Like I didn't know that at first either until I started looking into because of course we had to talk about the London nurse who lost her job for going. Christine Nagel, I think is her name, and she's now big. She does all the she's on the anti-vaccine tour now, and speaks all over the place. But yeah, like that was she spoke at on January 6th at that rally, but it was like the side rally. So she got to say it was like, well, I didn't do any of the storming. Like I wasn't a part of that. And it's like technically you're true, like it's true, but like you were a part of the overall the overall thing, But anyway.
Fun fact, Bigtree was a producer for Dr. Phil and later for the doctors, and that's how he met Andrew Wakefield and ended up promoting Wakefield's completely discredited views that vaccines cause autism, which they do not. Anyway, that's two men who are nominally liberal and yet who are prominent anti-vaxxers. And that makes it completely unprecedented that these liberal anti-vaxxers would join forces with Trump's maggots, right? It's the synergy between real politics and imagined dangers that is bringing the pro-Trump movement and anti-vaccine activists together. Except, while you can name as many liberal anti-vaxxers as you'd like, the fact of the matter is that opposition to vaccines has always been either apolitical or leaning towards a conservative viewpoint. And we have decades of research to prove it. In 2014,
so we'll go through. She goes through these studies here, but I was also going to note with. I don't know if you're familiar with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Not intimately so. I know the name Kennedy for one reason or another. But yeah, like tell me about Robert.
He is a part of that that historical family, so he is related. The funny thing is, like, he's always been like a liberal, but like I wouldn't even say that I really like knew his politics. Most of his activism was around somewhat good things having to do with like chemicals in the water supply and stuff like this, which, like, granted, we shouldn't have some chemicals in our water supply, but
yeah, fair enough.
But it went from that to like being freaked out about mercury in certain vaccines. And
Okay.
I mean, at the time, the mercury in the vaccine, in particular, that was freaking out a lot of anti-vaccine people, was a kind of mercury that is not the equivalent of the mercury that we all know that's bad for you. It's like ethyl versus methyl mercury. It's like the difference between ethyl and methyl alcohol, right? Like one of them will blind you, the other you have fun. I'm having a little fun with it right now, right? And
Yeah.
so the mercury in the vaccine like doesn't do anything to you. Especially it was so negligible, like no way it would build up. But he made it a crusade to go after the mercury in the vaccine, and that was kind of like what took over most of his career. And then, of course, when Donald Trump got elected, the first one of the first things, I think it was like the first week of his presidency, he met with RFK Jr. to talk about vaccines. Like,
The guy who thinks like a medical grade, uh, like mercury adjacent thing is the same thing that goes into a thermometer.
yes,
Is the person you want talking to the president? Yeah,
yes,
good.
about vaccine policy. I mean, he was trying to. I don't know if he was going for Surgeon General or like what position he was vying for, but like in the end, Trump didn't bite, which good. I guess what I mean, it did. It still turned out bad in the end, knowing the history of Trump. But like at the time, I was like, it good. Like, but it's like funny because the anti-vaccine people, and as much as you want to say that somehow our RFK Jr. was a Democrat or a liberal, as soon as Trump was in there, he's like, I'm going to work with him. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Well, like they have um the common ground of being, dumb rich guys, right?
yes. And I guess anti-vax. I think Trump was anti-vax even before he was president as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's the best timeline. The best timeline of them all.
A YouGov survey of 1,000 Americans found that the probability of believing in a link between vaccines and autism is much higher among conservatives than liberals. Interestingly, they also found that ideology is not the only factor associated with beliefs about vaccines. Trust in government also plays a key role. The less people trusted the government, the more likely they were to believe in a link between vaccinations and autism. Please remember that point because it's important, it's going to come up later. In 2016, researchers found that in a survey of 367 Americans, liberals were significantly more likely to endorse pro-vaccination statements and to regard them as facts rather than beliefs in comparison with moderates and conservatives. Conservative and moderate parents in the sample were less likely than liberals to report having fully vaccinated their children prior to the age of 2. That same year, a Pew Research poll found that while most parents were pro-vaccine, Republicans, including independents who lean Republican, hold roughly the same views as Democrats, including leaning Democrats, about the benefits and risks of the MMR vaccine, consistent with a 2015 Pew Research Center survey on this topic. Republicans and Democrats, including those who lean to either party, are about equally likely to support a school-based vaccine requirement. However, political conservatives are slightly more likely than either moderates or liberals to say that parents should be able to decide not to have their children vaccinated.
So if you missed that last point there, it seems like, you know, generally they're kind of on the same page of being anti-vax or not anti-vax between like liberals and Democrats or Democrats and Republicans. Uh, the
Mhm.
only thing that seems to differ though is when then you ask uh, Republicans whether or not you would mandate that people get vaccinated or require vaccines for schooling or stuff like this. That's when the Republicans go, "What about my freedom?" And then and then we don't get it.
Yeah, yeah. It gets very, what's next? A license to use my toaster, like incredibly quickly, right? Um, I don't want to do this because this isn't my stream, but Evan from Kino Lefter had a great question about the vaccine. I don't know if you caught it there.
Is the vaccine for death?
That was, I think, my favorite one, but the one above that is just, where does JFK Jr. stand on the vaccine?
Yeah, I responded in chat. I said anti, not oh JFK Jr. Okay, right. I missed the R
Hmm.
R part of that answer. Uh, JFK Jr. doesn't stand for a lot anymore. Let's be real. That's
Stands
coming
for the
up.
flag.
Eternally. Yeah.
Ah,
Uh,
beautiful.
but if you want to vaccinate for death, do so with Diet Pepsi, the official vaccine for death. Uh, I mean, Diet Pepsi might be old, but their vaccine for death is quite new. I realize now that part of the prompt that I was given included the word "new" in there, so I figure I had to somehow. This isn't their old vaccine for death, okay? It's relatively new. There, I hope you're
New
satisfied.
Pepsi Max Zero. Instant death guaranteed.
And for those who are newly watching, we have a prompt where you can whatever you want me to sponsor with Diet Pepsi, I will sponsor it with Diet Pepsi because that's all I drink on this show. This time it's in a glass.
Fun. It is so much fun, being on the show while enjoying the show. I'm multitasking right now.
It's fun having you. Good. Let's finish this off. I think now she's gonna get into her breakdown of like now that we've gone over that, she's gonna be give her closing thoughts on this.
2017, political scientists surveyed 1,000 Americans and found that political ideology has a direct effect on vaccine attitudes. In particular, conservative respondents are less likely to express pro-vaccination beliefs than other individuals. Furthermore, ideology also has an indirect effect on immunization propensity. The ideology variable predicts an indicator capturing trust in government medical experts, which in turn helps to explain individual level variation with regards to attitudes about vaccine choice. Is that enough for now? Do you see a pattern emerging? It's very subtle. Not only have conservatives been more likely than liberals to be anti-vaccine since before Donald Trump was even elected, but there has always been a strong link between anti-vaccine sentiments and distrust in government and science. If ever there was an inherent political component to vaccinations, that was it. Does the government have a right to tell us what medications we need to take? The Republican platform has historically been built upon the idea of small, weak government, aside from, outlying issues like what women can do with their bodies. Any liberal connection has always been secondhand, like liberals might be slightly more likely to try alternative medicine, and quacks who push alternative medicine are also more likely to be anti-vaccine because it's from big pharma. But no, it was always the medical freedom bullshit that was going to be the political aspect of vaccines and therefore would lead to our downfall. And the research has been very clear on this. So please save the fake shock that conservatives are suddenly anti-vaccine. They're not. They always have been. You just haven't been paying attention.
Yes, so I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's something that's been bugging me a lot. Because I saw like several left-wing people that weren't just the pundits that you were highlighting that had the same take of just like, oh, it's these left-wing people are all of a sudden siding with conservatives on this issue because it used to be that anti-vax was a left-wing issue, and like no, I mean that and like through everything that we've said so far, I don't think that I've like talked to an anti-vax person and gotten the idea from them that they wanted to seize the means of production or anything like that.
That would be like such a fun surprise. I was walking through Queens Park the other day. It's probably like a month ago. This is not a long story, so it won't take up too much time, I promise. But
You got time.
that's where the anti-vaxxers usually congregate, and they usually have like a microphone set up, and there's usually about 8 to 10 of them because like it's been 2 years. Like, please come up with get a different hobby.
Yeah.
Is basically where I think everybody's at right now. And so we're walking through, and there's a guy on the mic yelling about the Queen. I'm like, uh-oh. This is new. Let's
Which
hear what he has
queen?
to say.
Yeah, which queen? This is an important question.
yes. And like in the Dale Smith way, or like in the Queen of Canada,
In the Queen of
QAnon type
Canada
person?
QAnon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we talking Ramona?
No, it was Queen of England.
Ah.
Yeah, he's very critical of the monarchy, which I think is a take that maybe needs to be aired more often. However, I will say like that first that first few seconds of like, oh, maybe this is going to be a different kind of speech. It changed very quickly. It got, got really bad, really, really fast. And so, like, the wanting to hear something new from these people quickly turned into, I should get
Yeah.
out of here very quickly.
Yeah. Before all of a sudden they start like a mob start taking it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Hey, that guy's wearing a mask. Yeah.
Get him.
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.